All right, what's happening, people? Peace to all the family out there. Um, this I've now settled on a name, so this is an idiot's guide to happiness. Thank you for joining me again, and I'm here with an absolute legend, a very inspirational individual who has overcome many obstacles and challenges and managed to have a positive impact and influence on a lot of young people in East London. Today I'm speaking with the formidable, the unforgettable, the feisty and friendly, the one and only King Giza, aka Ahmed Hussain. Thank you for joining us today, Ahmed.
You're welcome.
Great to have you here. So, first things first, I would love to know, and I'd love for you to let the people know, how did you get the name King Giza?
Well, in my old days, I used to work as a bouncer doorman in nightclubs, and I kept on being called King, 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 and I thought I can't use the name King all the time, so I wanted to make it unique. I was gonna go for King Guna Giza because I'm a Guna, and then I found out there was someone already named King Guna Giza, so I'll start with King Giza being from East London.
Nice. And just to clarify as well, just in case there's any listeners who don't know anything about football, Guna is another way of saying Arsenal, or saying that you support Arsenal. And for me, actually, as I'm a Chelsea fan, and Arsenal just beat us yesterday in the FA Cup final 2-1, sad times. I was almost going to cancel this, but I can't cancel on the King Giza no matter what.
You know, you can't beat us in the FA Cup because it would be, I'm not going to use foul language, it would be called the FA Cup. I'll leave it to you lot to work out. Donald Duck
There
and
we go.
all. Use a bit of Cockney there for you. You
Beautiful,
go and do the homework and work out what it is.
beautiful. So anyway, so obviously you're in a quite happy mood, which
Very,
is quite appropriate for this.
very. I've even
Amazing.
got an Arsenal hat on
Yes,
in
indeed.
this nice warm day
Beautiful.
to rub it in.
That's why I love him. That's why I love him. Anyway, so you said you got the name King Giza when you were a bouncer, yeah?
Yes.
And how long were you doing that for?
For about 10, 15 years.
How did you get into becoming a bouncer?
It was by chance in the sense that I was looking for work, couldn't find the work that suited me, and then a friend of mine was a bouncer. He said to me, why don't I come and work with him? And which I did, and then it became history, basically.
Have you worked all over sort of London?
I've worked all over London from north, east, south and west.
Okay. And what made you stop being a bouncer?
I went to university because I thought I can't be standing on the door working with all these new punters that were younger. I thought it was time that I changed direction, so I ended up going to university and doing a degree
Okay,
to
interesting.
change direction.
And how old are you when you made that decision?
I was in my mid-30s.
Okay, wow. So when you were younger, you never followed the path of like like when you finish in school and then going to or doing A levels and then going to university. You didn't follow that path when you were younger.
No, because I, education didn't really grab me in that sense when I was younger. So
Okay.
growing up, I had friends and family that kept on encouraging me to go to university. So I did a higher national certificate at Goldsmiths College, University of London, to help me get onto a degree.
And so what did you say you studied again? Sorry.
I studied broadcast production.
Okay, so that's quite a change as well. Not just the fact that you wanted to change what kind of job you were doing, but what kind of field you wanted to work in as well. So, had you always been interested in doing broadcast?
When I was younger, I used to always wonder when television programs were made about camera operations, who the cameraman was, how did they get into it? So I was always interested in it, but didn't really look into it as I was growing up because I didn't realise that you could get to it through education.
Okay, fair enough. And then when you kind of decided to make this change in your life, um, you still held that same interest that you'd always had when you were younger.
Yes.
Okay.
When I was, but at the same time, when I was at uni, I was a father. I had two children, and who were living with me, and I also was raising two children, still working nights as a bouncer to, you know, pay the bills. So I had a lot of responsibility to take on, but I was set in the way that I wanted to change directions.
Okay. So you did the higher national diploma, and then you went on to do the degree after
Yeah, I
that.
did a higher national certificate
Certificate, sorry.
at Goldsmiths College, and which would lead me on to a degree. I went on. I went from Goldsmiths to a university called Surrey Institute of Art and Design,
Interesting.
in Farnham in Surrey, which wasn't the right course for me. So I did a year there. I stuck at it for a year, and then I applied to Ravensbourne,
Okay.
which has a very good television production course, and is recognised throughout the industry. So I got onto that degree from leaving Surrey Institute of Art and Design, and completed it at Ravensbourne, which was more geared towards what I wanted to do, which was more practical than theoretical.
Fair enough. So when you completed your degree, what was your next steps after that?
When I completed my degree, I did odd jobs within the industry.
So define odd jobs, like.
Odd jobs working as a runner, on different terrestrial channels. But I couldn't find a permanent, because it's very competitive. Couldn't find the permanent role that I wanted with a decent wage. And then I fell into working for a local authority, working with young people within social services.
Okay. Wow.
And while I was working within social services, I've jumped the gun here. So I'll go back a bit. While I was at Ravensbourne, on the weekends I did voluntary work with a youth charity in Hackney, in Dalston, when Hackney was a rough area.
Yes, I remember those days when
In
Hackney
Dalston, I
was always
worked in Dalston in the Round Chapel,
nice.
and I worked with young offenders, or keeping young people away from crime. And the charity's name was Crime Concern. And then, like I said, I was doing a runner here and there for different terrestrial channels. And I ended up working for the local authority. And I'll tell you how that happened. I went for an interview to work with two estates in Leytonstone, East London, where there was gang problem. And not knowing, but I did an interview with the charity that had been commissioned by the council to run the program. And when I went for the interview, I mentioned that I had worked voluntarily with young offenders and people that were in directing young people out of crime in Dalston, Hackney. And lo and behold, the charity that had won the contract from the council was the same charity I did the voluntary work with.
Wow.
So hence I was on a good foot, and I got into the job. And from there, the local people kept on complaining to the council, saying that this charity wasn't delivering what they wanted. But they liked myself and my colleague, the two of us who was running the programs with the young people.
Nice.
They said that we was very good at engaging young people, but they didn't want the charity who had promised a lot more than what we was doing. And so the council took back the contract and transferred me and my colleague over to them. And when they transferred me over to them, I went into the youth service, with the youth service now. with cuts. Youth service became, cutbacks. I was redeployed, and I ended up working for the social services for safeguarding. And while I was working in safeguarding, a job came up in the youth offending office, and I asked my manager if it was okay if I could go for it, if I could apply for it, and she said yes, and I applied for it, and I got it because of my experience with the local young people and working previously in Hackney as a volunteer.
Wow.
So that's how I ended up working with the local authority and youth offending, through voluntarily working with young people, because I could relate to young people, and I spoke to them, not down to them, but spoke to them on a level as they were equal to myself, which they are, because they're human beings. So hence, I built up a rapport with them, and I worked well with them. And then lo and behold, while I was in a job I was enjoying, and I'm jumping guns again here, and I apologise, but while I was working with with youth offending and all the youth service, I started using my skill set of broadcasting in teaching them, because they all want to make music videos, but started teaching them what goes behind it, the creativity, that you have to sit down and think.
And the practicality.
The practicality. You can't just say, I want to shoot a video and I'm going to be famous. You know, how you put it together from scratch, the lighting, camera skills.
So you were teaching them skills as well as engaging these young people who may have been having all kinds of challenges and getting into situations that they shouldn't be in and stuff like that, as well as engaging them to stop doing those kinds of activities or negative activities.
Well, these young people used to laugh at me when I used to sit in the corner with my cup of tea, dipping my biscuits in. Look at Ahmed, he's an old man. But they started calling me uncle because I was older than them, out of respect.
Once they gained,
gained a relationship with me and rapport. And they used to laugh at me and they'd say, why are you always reading, Ahmed? Why are you always reading? Because I always read books. And majority of them had left school without qualifications. And, reading a book was a task for them. I wasn't able to help every young person I worked with. One of them ended up in prison doing a long stretch. And he used to send letters to his friends saying to them, tell uncle to read this book, tell uncle to read that book, because of the times he was out on the outside. He was one of the kids that was laughing at me because I was reading books, but I had an influence which rubbed off on him. Now he's in a prison cell. He's got nothing to do. He started reading books. So it's sad that it took him to end up in prison to read a book. But at least he started using his time constructively. And he's sending me recommendations of books.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
So I'm sad that I couldn't keep him out of the nick. But at the end of the day, everyone has their path, and he chose that path.
Very true.
Sadly, he chose that path.
Very true.
And I'm not going to tell you what his name was and what crime he committed, because that's
That's all right. We don't need to get into any of that.
That's a bit unprofessional and
indeed. We don't need that. We don't need that.
But at least I've had a little bit of influence on him. I'm just sad that he took the wrong way to learn the influence. It would have been nice if he was sitting in his bedroom reading a book.
Yeah.
And not in a prison cell.
Very true. Very true. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's cut this off at this point.
Okay.
That was really, really, really interesting, and we're going to dig a lot more. thank you guys for tuning in. There will be part 2 coming with the King Geezer.
Thank you very much for listening, guys. This is fantastic. I've really enjoyed speaking to you guys.
We've absolutely enjoyed listening to your tales that you've got to tell us. So tune in next time, people, for An Idiot's Guide to Happiness. Peace and love.
This is the King Geezer.